got some sketching done at the Eisners. I don't know if that's rude, but the ceremony is simply too long for me to not get any work done. I'm so sorry to all the Eisner people. I clapped with everyone, but then when people were giving their speeches, I was just getting a little sketching done.
Hey, thanks for listening. Just a little bit of house cleaning. This used to be on YouTube as a video podcast, and I stopped doing it that way. And then recently, and I'm sure it's been going on for a lot longer than recently, but I realized that I could upload the episodes onto YouTube, the audio. So no video, don't get excited. Like you're going to see us smiling and laughing. But there's a bunch of episodes up on the Tradecraft podcast on YouTube. You just type in Tradecraft podcast, you'll find it. And if you prefer listening to the show on YouTube, have at it. A theme that seems to come and go in the conversations I've recorded recently, you know, I think on the surface we would consider it a discussion of fear, but I think it's more in the terms of creative bravery that seems to thread its way through. Because, you know, people who are brave are still afraid. Like, it doesn't get rid of it. And this is the thing, this sense of bravery and the lack thereof is what seems to prohibit us from achieving our goals. I used to look at a lot of it early on is not knowing any better, you know, not being smart enough to be afraid, just doing something and without a thought of consequence. And there's a certain level of success that can bring for sure, because at least you're charging into the situation. What it doesn't do is it doesn't give you a whole lot of planning and forethought. Screwing up the courage to go ask someone to dance, I think, is kind of one of the earlier feelings in that sense. And, you know, I guess, you know, we're just afraid of being pointed out as foolish or whatever the thing may be that scares us the most. I think there's a term in martial arts called bridging the gap. There's this sort of safety space between you and an opponent, but the only way to achieve, you know, victory is to bridge that gap. And in that gap, that's where you can get hurt. I think between the impetus and inspiration to make something and then the act of sharing something, let's ignore the hard work that goes into it in the middle, but that sense of bravery it takes to share these things is super important to be able to achieve the creative satisfaction that most of us seek, which of course this dovetails perfectly into today's guest, which is Daniel Warren Johnson. And I think Daniel's incredibly brave in the work that he chooses, and he's still doing very high energy, accessible, obviously notable IP products, but he's doing a lot of his own stories that aren't anybody else's. There's a vulnerability that he puts into his work, along with a ton of excitement and energy. So it's this interesting balance that he achieves in his work. I think I bring the subject up in this talk. We touch on the matter, and I think it's just a really beautiful thing that when somebody can do these sorts of things in their work. I'm super excited to share this with everyone. Daniel is a great creator. This is right after he won his Eisners, so he was pretty excited about the whole process, the whole experience, and rightfully so. And he's an incredibly generous person. I feel fortunate to have spent the time with him while he's in the middle of so many things and at the current time, he is working as the writer for the Transformers and the upcoming The Moon is Following Us with Riley Rossmo. That one's going to be pretty exciting, I think. It's going to be a fun comic. Sit back or do whatever you do, I guess. And this is me with Daniel Warren Johnson. Aside from having these conversations every week-ish, this is the creative therapy for me. Like, I get to really kind of think about my process, talk about other people's process, and kind of put the two together. But I find, like, for me, one of the things that isn't sort of, I don't know, it feels less intentional than journaling or meditating, but playing the guitar is the other piece of the puzzle for my brain.
That makes a lot of sense. I feel the same way about guitar in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Since I'm a shitty guitar player, have you just been playing the thing like as long as you've been able to pick one up?
Well, my mom and dad tried to teach me piano for a long time.
Oh,
because my mom's a piano player, and so that did not really take though. I was just kind of bored by it, and I had no interest in. Then I saw a picture of Kurt Cobain in like an encyclopedia.
Okay.
On the, it's like because I was homeschooled, so we'd have all these like encyclopedias. So it'd be like encyclopedia of music history, encyclopedia of like wartime history, encyclopedia of like large countries, or of like animals or whatever. And the music one on the last page had one on like the modern music section, which at the time was Nirvana. So it was a picture. It was actually a small picture of Kurt Cobain on the In Utero tour, and I was like, "This is awesome. I want to play that. What he's doing."
Full on Cardigan Kurt.
Yeah, Cardigan Kurt. And my dad brought me to Center Music in Framingham, Massachusetts, and got me a really crappy PV Telecaster and
Sweet.
did some lessons by a guy named Steve. Taught me, and like really kind of a portly gentleman that just in a really tiny little hot overheated like practice space. There's like not enough room.
The hot box.
Yeah, there's a hot box. There's not enough room for both of our like guitar necks to be in the same space where you're always adjusting.
Yeah.
And he was really cool, and he'd like regale me with stories about his hippie days. He's like, "Don't tell your parents I said that I lived with a woman out of marriage." I was like, "Your secret's safe with me." I was 11 at the time when I started doing that, and I took lessons with him for 2 years. And I think like maybe a year in, I wanted to quit because we were just learning from the book. Like Mary Had a Little Lamb and these boring tunes. And my dad took me shooting hoops. He's like, "Yeah, you're not going to quit. It's not happening." So I was like, "But I don't really like it." He's like, "Why don't you bring him some CDs that you do like and see if he can teach you that?" So I was like, "Can I do that?" And my dad's like, "Yeah, whatever. I don't care."
Yeah.
I just really remember that time of my dad like not letting me quit because my dad was pretty chill. You could like. I remember I didn't really like Little League, and so once I really said like I really don't want to do this, my dad was like, "Yeah, that's fine," but he wouldn't let me quit music. Okay. I think it's because my dad always wanted to learn how to play guitar and he never quite did. So
sure.
But yeah, that was a good time. So I was 11, and then since I started bringing in my own CDs, which is like punk rock nonsense, and I remember I brought in my guitar teacher like a Korn record, and he got so mad. He's like, "Nobody should be tuning down this low."
Right. C is not an acceptable tuning.
Yeah, C standard or C drop C, whatever. And he's always like, "They're just playing C over and over again. Just, that's what you can do." I'm like, "Yeah, but it doesn't sound the same as I'm hitting the C bar chord, Yes. Since I was 11, I've been playing guitar. And then once I started getting out of like the age, or once I was able to start making the guitar my own and start learning cool riffs that I was really passionate about, I kind of made the instrument my own, and I found it was a great way to like impress girls in high school. So I did that a lot.
Yeah.
I played a lot of acoustic in high school, and then getting into college, I played Mario Electric again.
Okay.
Yeah. That is my kid screaming. Sorry.
That's okay. That's all right. I realize I've just ticked over into the 5th year of doing the podcast, so I've heard it all.
Right
on. Yeah, it's so, but really interesting, and it always I bang this drum all the time, but I have this sort of this theory of 12. Like what we love by the time that we're 12 is this. I don't want to use the term calsa, but it is a fixed point in our life. So these, whether it's music or, television or whatever the things that we loved up to that point, which we're just like still dig at that point, is locked in.
I like that. That's cool. It definitely rings true for Transformers and for guitar and Pokemon.
Yeah. Right. Is that the next hill to climb for you? Is the Pokemon?
I would love to do a Pokemon fan comic, but I don't know if that'll ever actually happen.
Yeah, you never know.
You
right?
never know. And yeah. Oh gosh, I dig that. Yeah, it sounds about right. I'm trying to. There's other things that I really got into as I passed 11. Like I was not into manga, really, or like Japanese comics until I was like 15, 14, 15, 16, okay. But still pretty early.
Yeah.
So,
but like, were you into comics before that, or was that like?
I was definitely into comics. Yeah, a lot of Calvin and Hobbes, a lot of Sunday and like daily strips, like because that's all my library had.
Yeah.
So that was a big deal. And then honestly, it was a bunch of old Batman comics and Dick Tracy daily strips too. I don't know if you ever read the
cool
Dick Tracy daily strips.
No, I did.
Yeah, crazy.
My father wasn't like what you would call artistically, he was an engineer, so he could do engineering drawings. But in our house, there were two books. One was the collected Little Orphan Annie comics, as well as Dick Tracy. So when I was at his house on weekends, I would naturally pull those books out to look through them as a kid.
I just remember the kills. All the bad guys have such terrible ends, like drownings and strangulation, and like just really inventive ways to have somebody get murdered.
Yeah,
I loved it, and I was obsessed with it, and I feel like I should channel that into my comic book process now. Dick Tracy style deaths, ends. Yeah, gruesome.
Why not?
Gruesome deaths.
Well, because I think a lot of it, especially because I think there's a lot that has to do with there being like terrifying you. The idea, like, how do we scare someone in this limited, sort of footprint? And it's not so much showing it, but like implying what's going to happen. Like here's what we're going to do to you.
Oh, they show it. Yeah. There's not much left to the imagination. I think that's what rocked my world so hard. But yes, I hear what you're saying.
I wonder if they avoided the comics code. I wonder if there was if they were sort of sidestep from the comics code because they sort of had a different publication process.
That's an interesting thought. Who knows? It is pretty. It was like I was like, man, people read this in the newspaper.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, crazy stuff. Super cool.
So I can see that. It's funny. Like if I think about like all the stuff I read that you've done, I can see a lot of the Calvin and Hobbes stuff in there. And I'm not specifically saying like, oh, you draw Bill Watterson trees, because if you could, your life is great.
Yeah, that's true.
But it's the fantastic being who is there with the protagonist. So there's this super entity of some sort that appears to the protagonist at the time of need and accompanies them on this journey that they go through the, a bunch of your tales.
I can see that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I never thought about it in relation to Calvin and Hobbes. I suppose that's true. An element of the fantastical kind of coming alongside the normal. Yeah, I'm into that. That's cool.
Yeah.
I like to think I take from like his like sense of movement,
Uh-huh.
and action and dynamic
Yeah.
kind of presentation of like what we all know. So I love that. But yeah, dude, yeah, I never thought about it that way.
When you can look at somebody's, like, you're not old like me. And had I stayed in the comic business for the additional 25 years after I stopped, like the body of work would be a lot to take in, but I can sit down and I can look through and I can, over the course of a couple of years, read the scope of your work. And that's, so it affords me this, this opportunity to go, okay, here's what I'm seeing, and I see
Sure.
these sort of, and I didn't see that until we started talking about Calvin and Hobbes. And then, but other things I could think of is like the sense of, loss and finality that you reckon with a lot with your characters.
Sure.
Like this is a repeating theme, and how does a character contemplate or push against that sense of loss?
Oh, it's so funny, because I just like, it goes right over my head. I'm just like,
No.
I write what I know, and whatever that ends up being is what makes it into the comic. But intense stakes and having an element of stakes alongside something like genre fiction. That's something that I feel like is important for my work to kind of carry it to the finish line.
Yeah, I think that the distinction that I've always felt between writing comic books and writing novels is the novelist, when we get to write a novel, we get the luxury of rewriting, and they're long bodies of work. They're not, it's not it's not 22 pages or between that or 30 pages, but you get the time to tease out things. You go, oh, this is a theme, or you have readers go like, oh, I really like this theme of loss that you have in here, like, and you go, and then you go, okay, now I know what the theme is. Like, we don't really get to know what the theme is until we've written the piece. So I think for what I'm saying, I think you write what you write. You write what the characters are telling you they're going to do, and what happens isn't always in your control. And what everyone gets from it has nothing to do with you.
That's very true. And honestly, when I'm making it, I'm kind of in that zone of just getting it done and figuring it out. And I'm constantly in the trenches, like I'm in the forest. And then a lot of times I don't even give the work a return look. I'll read it, but I don't spend much time thinking about it because I'm honestly like in the next thing and I'm in the next zone. So it's really cool to get different perspectives from other people that go through the forest that I made and kind of see what what the reaction to was. It's very special.
Yeah.
An honor and a unique third person perspective that I feel like maybe a lot of people don't get when it comes to their work.
I think you're right, and I think that the absorbability of a comic book is unique in that respect. It's a very cool thing because comic books aren't this, oh, I got to sit down. How am I going to read through this thing? Like, they carry you along. They hold your hand and carry you along through the journey. So when done well, I mean, we've all also read the ones where we stare at the page going, wait, what's happening? And it's, so it's an interesting thing. So you do get this sort of feedback loop of readership, whether it's peer readership or, fan readership or, your wife's readership.
As she walks by. Yeah, no, it took her a very long time. I remember to read Wonder Woman Dead Earth. I think she didn't read it till it had been out for she hadn't read it for a year and a half after it came out. I couldn't believe it. I was like, how could you? She's like, I read all your scripts. Does that count?
Right. Yeah. It's sort of.
Yeah. but yeah, sometimes she's my sounding board for new projects, which she kind of gives me the vibe if she's really into something, a new idea that I might have. But oftentimes she's like me. She doesn't. She's like in it in the zone, and then she's not in it anymore. So, but it's kind of nice. I don't want a partner that obsesses over what I do anyway. It's my job.
Yeah. I mean, I think the best part is if your partner falls in love with the thing that you're doing. So like when they, they're like, oh, are you done with the next chunk? Because I really want to read the next thing. I want to know what's happening to these, to the characters, because they've become engaged with whatever is happening. You're like, and it's after pleasing yourself, it's really nice when you get to please the person that you love, and that with the art that you make.
Totally. I know if I made my wife cry, I did something right.
Right. That's the ultimate the ultimate bar is make your partner cry through your art, not through bad behavior. Before I forget, congratulations on the Eisners.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, that must have been quite an evening.
It was crazy. I did not expect to win at all. I really, really didn't think it was going to. Not for Transformers. I've been up for the best writer artist category before, and I don't know for other things, and I don't know. It's a huge honor. I'm still kind of in disbelief. They're right up there on the shelf. I don't hide them away. I'm like,
yeah,
I put them where people can see them because I am very proud. And, it's a lot of hard work that it's gotten recognized. So that means a lot. And I've been nominated 8 times now, and I've lost, 5 of those times. And then like it stings that night, and then you wake up and you're fine. I'm fine. I'm like, yeah, whatever, it's fine. I don't need that. And I'm super excited the night I win it, and then the same thing. I like wake up. I'm like, oh, I have this now.
Right. Where do I put this?
Yeah, it's like, oh, I have to get this home. This is a really heavy thing that I have to put in my carry-on.
Right, it's a consideration at this point.
Yeah, but I'm very thankful. I'm very, very proud, and it's an honor. It's a total honor, and totally had no idea it was coming. And when I won the first one, I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to win the second one. And I won the second one. Oh, geez.
Maybe I can leave early. Yeah.
I got some sketching done at the Eisners. I don't know if that's rude, but the ceremony is simply too long for me to not get any work done. I'm so sorry to all the Eisner people. I clapped with everyone, but then when people were giving their speeches, I was just getting a little sketching done.
For anybody who has not attended an award ceremony of any sort, they are incredibly long. There's a ceremony and a formality and all this kind of stuff that you have to sit through, and you realize like it's a sort of like 25-minute mark where you go, oh, this is going to take a long time. And you just you kind of have to kind of like temper your expectations of the evening. So having brought some drawing supplies may not have been a bad idea.
Yeah, it's just like I do the same thing. If I ever like go to church, I always sketch in my sketchbook because I'm like, I have to sit through all this. It actually helps me focus and stay kind of in the moment when I have something to do with my fingers. So
I think doing the drawings is okay because Will Eisner was my teacher in college, and I'm pretty sure he'd have been A-okay with you sitting there doing some artwork.
That's good to know. What was Will Eisner like?
He was great. He was really, really friendly and pleasing, or pleasant, but he was still intimidating because he was very tall, and he always wore a sport coat. So, we were a bunch of, college, grunge kids from the, late 80s, early 90s. So we, culture difference in that respect, but he was super nice. He was fixated on storytelling, which was really interesting because he really didn't seem to give much of a care about your rendering and craft of what you're putting on the page outside of storytelling. So he would look at what you did and then flip your page over and he used to use these blocks of graphite and would draw with this block of graphite on the back of on your pages. And so he would just kind of like, hey, think about framing your panels this way or whatever. So he would, clarity was a big thing. I mean, I think he and Toth and those guys are all from the world of make it as super clear as possible.
That's super cool to hear. Because that's what I tell all my all anybody that comes up to me and asks for advice. I'm like, framing and composition is the biggest thing, you know. Because like all the actual drawing part, you know, that's just stuff that just gets better with time.
Totally.
But yeah, storytelling and composition and everything. Yeah, it's usually the thing that needs the most work for people.
For sure, because comics doesn't afford a lot of time to do the thing. So once the clock starts, you've got to get this page done. So you don't have the luxury of, you know, really sitting back and, you know, coming up with a whole bunch of solutions for, you know, layouts. You really have to kind of go with what you know works and push your experimentation as much as you can in the time that it is afforded. And so mastering, and I use that term loosely, storytelling is the thing that you have to do, like to be able to tell a story. So you might as well at that point push, you know, that as hard as you can, because although, like you said, all the rest comes anatomy, dynamics, that comes in time. You'll figure it out.
Yeah, totally. And I feel the same way too about like conceptualizing designs and stuff when making comics. You know, I wish I had more time to do it, but oftentimes I'm like, I just design it on the page because, you know, if it works when you're drawing it on the page, it'll work 10, 20, 100 pages later when you have to draw it a million times. So and something either feels right or feels doesn't, you know. I found also like, it's a tiny bit of a tangent from what you're talking about, but like a lot of things you just can't be sweating over. So it's like if a design is right, it's right. And most of the time, my best designs have been the one that take me the quickest to draw or the quickest to figure out. You know, the more I abandon something that's not working instead of trying to make it right or go somewhere else with it, you know, it's usually the worse it looks or the more struggle there is behind it. So, which never reads well, in my opinion.
No, it can be problematic because it's not animation.
Right.
So, you know, you don't have to make it as dead stock simple as possible so it reads at every angle, but I think that quick solution helps. There's often, if we're sitting in our sketchbooks coming up with something, you know, we're sort of given over to noodling and, you know, oh, look what I can do here kind of stuff, which ultimately isn't what you can do when, you know, when you're on the clock.
True. And, you know, my sketchbook now is like this extension of my work self. It used to be just drawings for fun, which I still do sometimes, and when I do drawings for fun, they do happen in the sketchbook, but a lot of times it's like problem solving and preparation for what I might be drawing the next day or the next week, something that things that are going on in my head that is just a natural flow through. Like a filtering process before I actually get to the page.
I think I was very much in that vein. I was never really a person who just sat in my sketchbook and drew. Like, to me, I wanted to draw on the page, and my sketchbook was solving, you know, these problems, you know, that you're going to have to face. Like, boy, there's going to be a whole bunch of flying cars coming up. I better start coming up with shapes for flying cars, or whatever the thing is. You have to start kind of working ahead of time because you don't have the time during the day when you have to get the pages done. So let's just go back just a slight bit. God, there's so many little sort of noodles. So I mean, clearly manga is an inspiration visually for where you come. Like, what were the things that hit you first with the manga and I'm no expert in manga. Like, my expertise is Shiro. Like, I know Shiro like Inside and Out, pretty good with Otomo, and then it gets a little fuzzy. And then Adam Warren. There you go. Those are my guys.
Well, when I was first starting out, there was whatever my library had, which was at the time just Ranma one half, which I didn't love, but I knew it was different, and I appreciated the kind of uniqueness of it at the time because had never really experienced manga before. And then one thing led to another. I remember Hellsing started coming out that I was really into, and Barnes and Noble, like the bookstore near my house, was like just starting to carry little collections of manga here and there, and I devoured whatever I could get my hands on. And there was also this one-off book that I got when I was like maybe 15. It was Tetsuro Ueyama. It was Metal Guardian Faust, which the story was nothing special, but that artist is really amazing. I don't think he's still doing comics now, but he's done a bunch of stuff that has not been translated, like Lampo the Hypersonic Boy, Mitsuyoshi. There's this like Princess Puppy Girl thing, like it's like a little girl's manga that he did. This actually, the art's really amazing. I have it all, and the 2 copies of the English translation of Metal Guardian Faust that my mom got for me when I was little, and which you can still find on Amazon used. It's the only thing that ever got translated. But I'm super proud of myself because I picked that out when I was a little kid. And I was, well, not little, but when I was in high school, and I was like, there's something special about this guy. And sure enough, I was like, I forgot that I had owned it when I started seeing his stuff in Japan when I went there in 2015. And then, of course, like you said, the staples as I started getting older, but this isn't really till like college-ish or a little after. Shiro, Atomo. And, I was picking up those Shiro Appleseed comics when I was in college. I didn't like the story at all, but I thought the art was amazing.
Yeah.
And I kept collecting them as I graduated college. And whenever I found one, I'd pick it up because they would just be in the gathering dust in the back of a comic book store in their manga section. And now they're all at a print like $200.
Right.
So maybe Dark Horse will get the license back. I don't know. Dark Horse, what's going on? Let's go. I want more Appleseed.
Seriously.
If there's a new version of Appleseed, like a new printing, I'll buy it because I'm that big of a fan.
Yeah. So I lived in Manhattan for 20 plus years. So we had all the great stores like Books, Kinokuniya. And, one day you go there and then you see the large scale black and white ones and you're like, oh, I guess I have to spend all my money on these now. So you buy all these books and every time there was a different version, there I was.
So good. I remember every once in a while somebody will bring me a new version that I don't have as a gift to a show because they know I'm a big fan, like from the 80s,
Yeah.
I think it was Orion.
Yeah, the Art Adams covers, man.
Yes, Art Adams covers. It
was such a crazy cool, but I mean, clearly he knew it was awesome. So he's like, yeah, I want to do this. I cite that. I think it was like book 4, not issue 4, but the volume 4, there was a knife fight.
Yes.
That fight with Duna and the knives, it's one of the best drawn combat sequences ever.
Yeah, and just like the storytelling of it, it's like you can tell what's happening, and it's so advanced, but it's also approachable.
Yeah,
it's so well done. I feel like I'm still searching for a comic that still gives me the feeling of, Appleseed, and I haven't found it yet.
It's tough. I mean, I think there are people who make things that what they do comes from a place that you can't dissect it too easily.
Right.
Like you start dissecting it and it all falls apart. You're like, well, how did they put it together? And he kind of falls in that category for me. He's always has. I'm like, oh, this is some next level stuff.
I've always really appreciated though his framing. Speaking of storytelling and composition, his framing and his like ability to use perspective to his own kind of. He just bends it to his will.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that curvilinear perspective that he just kind of makes, but he'll do it in a way that is sort of almost organic.
Yes,
like he'll sort of make a French curve out of things. You're like, wow, okay, all right.
Yep. Yeah, there's an element of and what's another thing, sometimes I see people using like perspective grids in Manga Studio or digital or whatever, or even just traditional, and they're adhering too closely to a perspective grid. It like looks too
Mm-hmm.
good. It looks like too perfect. I'm like, get dirty
Mm-hmm.
this up. And I tell them to go read Appleseed. They're like, oh, okay, there's a copy for $150 on Amazon. I'm like, buy it. It's worth it.
It's worth it. Yeah. Yeah. It's, there's a lot there. There's a
Yeah.
lot there to take in. You wear your loves on your sleeve with the work that you make, which I think is so, I think what it is you're with a smile, you're inviting people into your personal joy, despite however make grim the story can be. You're saying, come in, enjoy this with me. Like you said, you love Vans. You're going to put a van in there. I like how you even have characters wearing Vans.
Oh yeah.
Little
Yeah.
double joke there.
Flat shoes.
Yeah. And but it's this interesting, I think you're doing that like artistically and subjectively, so you kind of melding all these things that kind of bring you together to what you do, which is, I think, what we're supposed to do as the people who make stuff. I think, and it's I think I think why it sounds so like, well, duh, is that it's a scary thing to do, because it's
Sure.
not. First off, you're kind of revealing something about yourself, which is never easy.
Mm.
And the second thing is that you look around and nobody else is doing that. And a natural instinct to that is like, shoot, should I be doing this? Because nobody else is doing this. But that's like when like you have to kind of go, okay, gut, don't steer me wrong here. Let's go. I think what's super gutsy is that you do you do what you want that makes you happy on the page, which is it's just not easy to do. I know it, like I said, I'll say it again. It sounds simple. And why are you making a point of this, Alex? But the point is, it's actually really fucking hard. I apologize for the French.
It's okay. I'll take the compliment. Thank you very much. And my response is also, yeah, dude, it's like something I don't even think about. I'm like, the only way I can make comics is to make them the way that I know how to. And I just wouldn't want to make stuff if it didn't get me excited. So,
Mm-hmm.
I don't really plan on working with a writer anytime soon.
Yeah.
No offense to writers. I just don't feel like spending time in other people's heads. I just want to be in my own until I get bored of that, which I don't know when that will happen. But I know what it takes to push myself, and I know what I want to see in the world that I feels, like I want to make a comic that I can be excited about, and so that means making pages that I'm excited about. And if anything, my work suffers if something's too easy. So
yeah,
I really need to have a challenge in front of me in order for me to feel like it is worth spending the time on. Yeah.
There's a feeling I used to get drawing, and it was just the only time I knew it was kind of working, like not working in the terms of like this all is legible and this is all correct and proper, was I would feel that feeling like going on a roller coaster,
Mm-hmm.
that butterfly churning in the upper part of the in the solar plexus, of kind of like trembling of nervousness when I'm drawing. And when I felt that, I'm like, oh, something, and it took me a while to recognize, oh, that's when it's kind of happening.
Okay.
Yeah. And yeah, I don't know. I think you're probably just always there. You're probably, no, but I think there's like, you were talking about like challenging yourself. I mean, like that's when you set out to do one of your, let's say the last 3 or 4 projects, like where are you framing it is there a consciousness of saying, I'm excited by this idea, but how do I make myself go, oh boy, how am I going to do this? Like what how do you sort of ratchet it up?
I guess how do I ratchet it up? I well, there's always a bit of a here we go again when you start like working on a project. But it takes this kind of conscious, almost dumb brain. You have to turn on your dumb brain to
Mm-hmm.
just like put one foot in front of the other. And a lot of times that helps by writing a script and feeling pretty good about the script.
Yeah.
Because I know if a script is at least okay, I can make it really good with the art.
Yeah.
Something that makes sense, that's legible, that I feel good about. And then it's so I'll like write like 3 issues of a new series before I start drawing anything. But I don't usually write past 3 because by the time I'm in issue 3, I'm like really far away from the starting point, and before I get any farther, I want to make sure that I kind of get the feel of the story and the tone, and make sure that what I'm drawing is lining up with the issues that are getting farther and farther down in the pipe. So I guess I just you know, the first page is the hardest. The second page is a little easier than that.
Mm-hmm.
Third page, and so on and so forth until you're rolling. And
Yeah.
it's just at this point, it's like second nature, um, and I don't think about it very much.
Yeah.
It's. I still have moments of doubt and like, is this worth it? Is this story any good? But every artist does that. So
I I love it that I mean, listen, it's a byproduct of having to do work for, especially working for the big two publishers. You have to produce a script. Like they're not going to go,
right,
sounds like a great idea, Daniel. Let's go, and then you're like, oh no, I'll just thumbnail out my book and I'll figure it out. Like I get that. We can do that as, artists. We can tell a story with thumbnails, but they've got to get approvals because it's their job on the line. So you got to put a script out there. And how was the process? I guess, how was the process for you first time you had to do a script to what is your writing process now? So when, being Transformers is your current thing, like what was that start? So how did it start for you?
well, I've always worked from a script.
Good for you.
I've never really thumbnailed my way through. I remember trying to do that for like a short story once and just be like, this takes way too long.
Okay.
And writing something that happens, it takes way shorter than drawing it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I shouldn't. I was like, I can't be afraid of the written word. It's just easier. It's like
Yeah.
if I say that these things happen, then I can just draw them, and then I just figure out the coolest way to show what's actually happening in the story. I don't have to like figure it out with thumbnails and move things around and have like a big piece of paper where I thumbnail it all out. So I did that a little bit in Space Mullet, but it just took too long, and it's hard to keep track of everything. And yeah, so I was like, oh, screw this, I'll just write scripts. And so
Yeah.
I wrote scripts for myself for my creator owned stuff. I wrote scripts for Big Two, for Transformers, for everything, and it's just that's the way I've always done it.
Hmm. I think it's great. I know that a lot of artists who want to write struggle often with the putting the words on the page. I know I struggled with it in the terms of identity. I would think like, oh, well, I'm a penciler, I'm not a writer. So I think I kind of was a bit nervous by that whole thing. And that was always a little bit of a challenge, was being concerned about that, because you're like, oh, but I only found that I could tell stories for comics when I wrote them by writing them. And then drawing them was a different job. That was a separate thing. So, but a lot of artists do go like, oh, I thumbnail the whole thing out. I'm like, okay, that's cool, but and that's why I always say like, well, if you do end up wanting to do more writing, take a chance, write something for somebody else, because you'll have to write it on paper so they can do the
True.
job. So, I always try to challenge people, as I always try to challenge myself, to expand my capabilities. Like, how do I get better at something? And you hit the nail on the head. It's a lot easier to change a sentence than it is to change a panel.
It's true, and it's just The process of starting something from scratch is so hard. Why would I make it harder than it has to be?
Yeah.
There'll be plenty of time for me to struggle through uh, different iterations of things, but I don't have to do that at the beginning stages. So I just start writing, and if something works, it works. If it doesn't,
Yeah.
it needs time. Um, Something like Transformers, where it's like there is a deadline. It is a little bit of like just charging into a dark room and seeing what you run into.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the creator-owned stuff is a little more intentional. It takes a little more time, but for the most part, I'm like, it's yeah, dumb brain, and just go for it.
Yeah. I think it's like did you read Stephen King's book on writing?
Yeah, great book.
Yeah, it's great. I found it to be probably the most inspirational for me because it was like, listen, all you need is a character and a basic premise, and you can kind of go from there. And I'm
Yeah,
like, I got that, like that was a pretty, solid backing up. I'm like, if that guy can do it, not that I can do it like him, but that's at least a good starting point.
totally.
But like with Dead Earth, using like Dead Earth as an example, that's not your property.
Mm-hmm.
So that like to me, I'm really curious, because I get, Power Bomb. You're like, hey, I've got this idea. Here's my pitch. You know, Image is like, oh, cool, that's great. Let's fire it up. If it, apologize if that was not Image.
It's Image.
Okay, good. But like with Dead Earth, that's not, it's not out of, it's not whole cloth. You're taking something that exists, and fortunately they've sort of created a side universe of creativity, but still someone has to approve that to say, whoa, that's a little too much for our reader base. But was that something you were just like, did they say, hey, we would love for you to do something? Do you have any ideas? Or did you say, oh, I've got this idea, and chase them down?
It was the first one. They called me
Okay.
and said, "Hey, we'd like you to do like a Black Label book, and we're wondering if you'd want to write and draw something with us." And I said, "Yeah, that'd be awesome." And so this was Andy Curry who called me up, and I was like, "Well, I haven't really thought about it, but let me think about it for like 2 weeks." And after pitching them a bunch of stuff they didn't want to do, like Dial H for Hero and Pa Kent loses his faith in Christianity when he finds out there's aliens. They're like, we want more A-list, you know?
Sure.
And I said, okay. So I was like, what about Wonder Woman? But all of the other heroes are dead, so she can't become the bronze medal. And they're like, yeah, we like that a lot. So I came up with the story and a relative setting, and we pitched it, and they said yes. So, it's hard to fathom it getting approved nowadays. It wasn't that long ago, but I'm very proud of it still. I can't believe I got away with all that stuff. But
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a good time.
Well, so I mean, so for people who are out there going like, boy, I want to do a book and I want to pitch something, like the pitch process it can be daunting for a lot of people, especially, if you don't have a track record, it's even tougher. And what at that point was DC requiring from you in the pitch?
Some sketches, a very rough outline,
Mm-hmm.
and that was about it. No interior pages or anything, because they came to me, and I was working on Murder Falcon at the time, and so I just kind of threw together some quick sketches to show the vibe. It's like King Conan, but with Wonder Woman instead of Conan, and sent it to them. And I was like, take it or leave it. I didn't say that, but I was like, here you go.
Yeah.
And they're like, yep, we're into this. Let's do it. So I don't know what that pitch meeting looked like. I know that DC has these big pitch meetings where everybody takes turns kind of hey, we got this, we got this.
Sure.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing.
That's cool. Yeah. And was the process similar with the Beta Ray Bill book?
Well, Beta Ray Bill was more of the lines of I contacted Marvel and I was like, you should let me do this. And they said no.
Okay.
That was before Wonder Woman. No, sorry. I don't remember when that was. So it was before Wonder Woman, and things didn't really take off. Like, Marvel didn't want to do it. They didn't think a Beta Ray Bill book would sell. I think this was when I was in the middle of Murder Falcon. And I was like, oh, that stinks. Okay, no problem.
Mm-hmm.
And then they came back around, and it was basically, I was deciding between Beta Ray Bill at Marvel or Wonder Woman Dead Earth. And Marvel wouldn't pay me as much. And I was like, okay, I guess I'll go with the people that are paying me more money.
Sure.
That was like the reason that I chose.
Listen, we all need a metric of some sort.
Yeah, I was like, well, here's how much DC's going to pay me to do this Wonder Woman book, and they're like, oh, we can pay you this much. I'm like, well, that's a lot lower than this DC rate. And there you go. Yeah. So I was like, I didn't want to burn a bridge, but I was just like, hey, this is what it is. And then after Wonder Woman, and this is like right in the middle of the pandemic, I just reached out to Marvel randomly, and I was like, are you still interested in doing a Beta Ray Bill comic to test the waters? And they're like, yes, actually, we are still interested. And then they said, just kidding, COVID's too crazy, we can't do it. And then a month later, I was like, let me just email. No, a month, 2 months later, I was like, let me just email them one more time to see if maybe they've changed their minds. And they had.
Nice.
And it was great.
Well, there was so much insecurity, floating around at that time that
true.
They did. I'm sure half the people had no idea if they would have a job in 6 months. Like, I think there was just this fear.
I didn't know if I was going to have a job. I took a big commission list because I was afraid they'd ask me to stop drawing Wonder Woman.
Oh, they asked you to put pencils down?
I was worried they were. Everybody was.
Okay. Yeah.
It didn't end up happening, but yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, but some books did go pencils down. I mean, there was just, and I mean, part of me goes like, oh boy, that was a great opportunity for them to really, figure out the digital world for their business. But kind of a huge chunk of me is like, I'm glad they didn't, because I like the artifact. I like the fact that you can create a book and have a book, and rather than a digital book become printed, if it sells well enough, like that's a little, it can be a bit arbitrary.
True.
Yeah. Okay, so that's cool. So what did they require from you, since this wasn't them coming after you to do Beta Ray Bill? This was you sort of pursuing them.
Well, I kind of pitched them an outline, and this is different because doing Beta Ray Bill with Marvel, they wanted it to be in the main universe. Like, they had a space for a Beta Ray Bill title within what Donny Cates was doing with the King in Black, I guess, in the Thor universe.
Mm-hmm.
And so they said the main thing is there has to be some sort of King in Black related tie-in for issue 1, and you can go do whatever you want for the next 4 issues. So I did. I was like, oh, Fin Fang Foom, except he's got black skin. They're like, great.
Well, I mean, I get it. Listen, there are the tail that is the movie business is very large, and they really do have to work to connect as much as they can for the just in case factor.
Yeah.
We just never know. We don't know what's going to be put on the spreadsheet of filmic interest in the future.
Well, it was, again, the dark times. COVID was raging, and I did not know what the future held for me. because I was thinking about do a power bomb after Wonder Woman, but I was like, you know what? I think it might not be the worst thing for me to work for the man for a little while longer, and just get another project out and see if maybe I can use it to kind of weather out of COVID. And it was great. So I was like, man, if this is all I have to do is just keep a King in Black thing in for issue 1 and literally toss it out the window, I'm happy to do that. And I honestly, I still think the book reads well, even with the kind of shoe-in tie-in thing in that issue 1.
I did, I wasn't reading what Donnie was doing on Thor,
right?
But I wasn't distracted. I didn't go like, huh?
Yeah.
Like it fit enough within the Thor-averse for me. And, having cut my teeth, on Walter's run of Thor, like, I'm in if I see Beta Ray Bill. I'm like, all right, cool. Like this is my youth of comics. So I'm anything that's going to bring some of that joy back is fine by me. So, and it's okay to work for the man. It's okay. It's not a terrible thing.
It's true. They got me through COVID.
Yeah. And listen, it's like being a kid and going over to your friend's house. You get to play with their toys.
It's totally true.
And
I felt that it's the same way working on Transformers, playing with
totally. Yeah.
Playing with the toys. Literally.
Right, totally. And so how did that one sort of fold together for you? Because that's, I'll tell you, and this is completely like aside, this is long before I even approached you to come onto the podcast. I was in the comic shop and I always like, hey, how's business? Because I'm always curious and concerned about how things are going. And they're like, it's all right. They go, but like you, Daniel, he's like, it's kind of saved comics right now because like that's the number one selling book for them. Like that book sells. And then because of that book, the Duke, I think line is like, so all the things that are kind of being built off of that are really, really selling well in at least at this particular shop, which I'm thinking like, well, that's great. Like fantastic. When something is working like that.
Totally. I had a lot of people come up to me at San Diego, comic book shop owners, just being like, thank you for making Transformers. It's helping us make money. I'm like, that is the best news. I'm so glad. Thank you for telling me. It's so cool.
Yeah. Like that's its own Eisner in a sense, like it's because they're the conduit. They're the things that get that because, it's like going to that record store when you're searching for something, you don't know what you want.
Yeah.
And the great record store person's like, hey, have you heard this album? And you're like, oh, I don't know what that is. And they're like, oh, here, I think you'll like it. And it's like the same thing with comics.
It's awesome. That's really cool. And, it's just it's a nice little break from Creator Owned, which I needed.
Yeah.
It was just the right thing at the right time. And I'd had a working relationship with Skybound for a long time because of Extremity and Murder Falcon, which I did over there. And I hadn't worked with them since Murder Falcon. I did Wonder Woman and Beta Ray Bill, then do a Power Bomb. I wasn't necessarily planning on going back, because when I did do a Power Bomb, it was just with Image Central, with no support from any other partner at Image. So it was I was in this good place making comics, but I just was a little tired of working on my own stuff. So, pardon me, just seemed like the right time, right thing, right time. And it's been a blast.
So I'm guessing they came to you and said, hey, would you be interested in this?
They did. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, because they secure the license and then the conversations happen. Who would be very cool to do this? That's the number one rule.
Yeah. They were like, we feel like you'd be the best person for this job, and we hope you say yes.
Well, it's and it's it's an interesting level of trust for someone to to put onto a single creator to do two parts of the process, or
Sure.
3 parts of the process. I mean, that's kind of it's a gamble on their end, and not to say that you're not person who doesn't produce, but it's still a gamble regardless. Because, I mean, once again, you're pulling your stuff in there. You're like, I'm going to have giant robots kind of fight like pro wrestlers. Like that will be very fun. Like let's have some excitement and some stuff, because there's only so much fun you can do with blasters.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, you'll notice the Transformers don't use their guns that often when I draw them.
It's like the A-Team.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool. So they come to you and you got, series of conversations, then you start brainstorming, and then what if, and then the schedule.
Yeah. The schedule was intense. Hasbro really wanted it to come out Q4 23 for whatever reason. So
they're a toy company. Think it out.
Right. Yeah. So it was tough. It was really tough. And by the time issue 5 and 6 were rolling around, I was like really feeling the pressure, especially on the art. So when I finished art duties, it was a real breath of fresh air, honestly. Because I was just like at my wit's end, trying to get it all done. So, and I only know one way to go, and that's 100%. Like, I don't know how to phone it in when it comes to like drawing. So I just like push and push and push and push. And also writing still, I'm writing for Jorge Corona, who's doing an amazing job. And I had to write for him to get to just like start drawing before I even finished drawing issue 6. So that was really tough.
You're double stacking.
I was double stacking. I was writing, and I'm still do this now. I write in the morning for a little bit, for like an hour and a half, and then the rest of the pages for drawing. But that usually helps me. That usually allows me to get enough work done.
Right.
Yeah. Also, when you only have an hour and a half a day, then you really just start writing. Boom, go.
You have to. Yeah. Like there's no fooling around. There's no waiting for the muse to show up. There's no like, let me finish this cup of coffee before I like. It is sit down and get pages done.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't always happen. A lot of times I just sit at the screen and text my friends, but it still counts because I'm not doing drawing.
I know. I set up I have this timer that shuts off emails and text and social media access. So it runs for 50 minutes, and then I get 10 minutes of a break to stretch my legs, pee, and check the email, and then back to 50 minutes of writing. So that's my mornings are usually filled up with 4 of those blocks, and then I'm free to do other stuff.
Pomodoro.
Bingo. There you go. That's the only, listen, my brain is my biggest enemy. So I have to do everything I can to defeat it at all cost.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. So how many, I mean, like if you're writing, let's just say you have a good hour and a half of writing time, how many pages do you think you're kind of getting through, roughing out?
I used to try and do it by page count, but what ended up happening is I just write crappy pages.
Nice.
If I wasn't feeling it. So I just do more time now.
Okay.
It's about an hour and a half. And sometimes the hour and a half is me just writing one page and thinking about other things. And other times the hour and a half is me kind of cranking and getting stuff done. But like, it does not take me long to write a comic book page. So if I have the idea, I'll get through it. But the goal is to not write all day. The goal is to write a little bit every day, so that maybe Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday are really rough writing days, but Wednesday and Friday things are really popping off in a good way. So I give myself that time in the day so I can have it be a place where I can just dump a bunch of bad ideas, a bunch of bad thoughts. It's not that all the time, but if it is that, it's no big deal because it's only an hour and a half, and then I'm done.
Right. Well, and that's I mean, I like the idea, because if you said like, hey, I'm going to write all Tuesday. Tuesday is my writing day, and if Tuesday is a bad day, your writing day is gone.
Fridays used to be my writing day, and I
Yeah.
wouldn't draw on Friday, and then I'd feel terrible because I'm like didn't really write anything,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
so this way I can still be productive. And if I only write for an hour and a half, then I can get other stuff done and feel okay about myself. So
Yeah. How are you at shifting gears?
terrible.
Yeah, same. Same. Do you have any tricks that you do to get through it?
No, I
Yeah.
suffer.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
so bad at it.
No, I get it. I the thing that works the best for me, the thing that worked the best for me shifting gears when I lived in Manhattan, I would I'd so I had a fancy job as an art director for a bunch of years. And I would, if I took the subway home or if I took the bus home, or even if I walked home, I really was all wound up. Like I had a very hard time shifting gears to be home. And, it wasn't fair to my wife. She'd be like, why are you such a pain in the ass? And it was because I just couldn't figure it out. But I loved riding bicycles. So for most of my time working there, and it was just straight across to Midtown
Sure.
for me. It wasn't a long thing. It was maybe a 10-minute bike ride, but I would ride my bike, go into the loading dock, and then walk into the elevator bank from behind and take it up, and everyone would look at me like, what's going on with this idiot? But it was that little bit of a bike ride on the way home that allowed my mind to completely reset. And so I have to find things that allow my brain to completely reset to be able to shift to that next thing. And it's not foolproof. You know, for those of us who have the luxury to take a 15-minute nap, that's always helpful. A quick 10-minute meditation, that can help for me.
Mm-hmm.
But it's tough, man. It's tough because I struggle after I have to like stop doing the thing that I've sort of worked into in the morning and then go, ugh, you know.
I try and walk 10,000 steps a day. So sometimes I'll do a middle of the day walk, and that
Mm-hmm.
really helps.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, fitness, dude. So how old are you?
37.
Okay, that's what I guessed. It's a like you're young still, but like it's a big concern for me. Like, when we have, terrible things like, you know, Kim Jong-gi, passing away unexpectedly, and many other people who get these, it's not a healthy lifestyle. Like sitting and drawing, particularly, um, drawing is not a healthy lifestyle. It is really hard on the body in so many ways.
Sure.
And because of the passion for the thing, we're prone to putting way too many hours at that drawing table. And it's like, and it's brutal. So I applaud you for putting those 10,000 steps in if you can get them.
Yeah, it's just really good for my back,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of keeps me upright, forces me to engage my core every day.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like it's like over 4 miles a day. So
Yep.
sometimes I will write on my phone on the treadmill.
Okay. Are like typing or dictating?
Like typing.
Okay. Yeah.
I've only fallen off the treadmill once. I just go to the gym. I'll walk for like an hour and a half while writing.
Okay. That's cool. I do know people who will dictate out their novels and then have it transposed and then, fix it up after that.
Yeah, I don't dictate. I just kind of type in my phone because I'm like just getting the beats down, and then some other
Yeah.
time I'll get it a little bit nicer. But sometimes I'll just
Yeah.
write dialogue for pages, and I don't have any sort of descriptors, and then I write the descriptors later.
I think that's really important. And I think that's one of the things that's tough for a lot of people when they start on a thing, especially with writing. Be okay with writing beats. Just sitting down with a blank piece of paper and a pencil or a pen and just write the beats of the story. What happens? What happens? What happens? What happens? You can build off of that framework. That's because that's where you're going to feel, and those are way easier to change. Like you can, cut, paste, and move things around super quick. and then dialogue, because you can kind of think of all the funny things. And that actually, you could probably dictate some dialogue, because you could just probably jibber jabber, um, into a mic.
I usually start by beating things out on an issue and move things around and think about it. And
Hmm.
honestly, after something's really beated out and I'm feeling good about it, it's not that hard to write.
No, I
So if
think
I can
that's the
get that
best one.
outline down, I'm feeling pretty good.
Hmm. Yeah, that's for me with, and even with like with my latest novel that I'm writing, that's how I did the whole novel. I just sat down and just beat out the whole story, like bing, 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 and then I turned that into an outline. And that's much more work, but it's a lot easier for me to do it that way. And that's not saying that's the only way to do it. It's just that is a very fast way for me to get it done.
Sounds awesome, man. Sounds like you got it figured out. I
No, I've got great plans. It's the execution that is always the hardest part.
Yeah, execution's tough.
Yeah.
Um, but I do like this. Like you said, it's tough to switch from writing to art, but I'm trying to get better at it, and I do want to keep writing a lot more than I was in the past. And me writing is also healthier than on my body than me drawing. So
Hmm.
cutting out an hour and a half a day from the drawing board is probably not the worst thing in the world.
It's way more economical.
Yeah,
Although you really can't sell script pages. Nobody wants to buy those.
that's true. But I'm
If,
trying
if
to
it, you know,
build that IP out. So
Dan, if you just sat down and hand wrote out the script at the end, then you could sell those.
I do doodle all over my scripts and change things.
See,
And
yeah, I remember I bought 3 Adam Hughes pages when I was just out of college. So he was doing Justice League at the time, and Jose Marzan Jr. was inking him. And they were like, they were like $40 a piece or something. So I'm like, I'll buy these. These are great, but I really bought them because there were drawings in the back of the pages. I'm like, oh, cool. I'm like, that was always the fun part to look at, is what was behind the page.
totally.
Yeah. So you're writing in the morning and you're not drawing Transformers. Here's my great detective brain is at work here, but you're drawing.
Mm.
So are you drawing a new project?
Well, my time is split between The Moon's Following Us that I'm doing with Riley Rossmo.
Right.
So
Right.
I'm drawing about 20% of that book. So it's a fair amount of work.
Okay.
Um, and it's about 20% of 10 to 20% of each issue. Uh, so Riley works on the pages of an issue, then he mails them to me, and I will draw on the same pages that he's
Very
drawing.
cool.
So that's what I was working on today. And then I'm also working on a science fiction book, like epic sci-fi thing that everybody has heard about, but nobody's like.
I haven't heard about it, so I guess I'm not cool.
I'm always working on my YouTube, and it's one of those things that's going to be so long in the tooth because I have to work on it for so long before I can really make it come out. Which is another reason why I'm working on this book with Riley, so I have something that's in between that. But I am kind of dissatisfied with the general genre of science fiction right now. I find it
On your end or in general?
in general.
Okay. Right.
I find it severely lacking, and it doesn't get me excited anymore. There's only one thing to do when that happens.
Make your own.
I gotta make my own. I miss the crazy. I don't know. I want people to say out loud as they read this book, "That is wild." That's the goal.
Yeah, sure.
No holds barred, just like absolutely pedal to the metal, not afraid, just totally like middle fingers up in the air, just like, yeah, I dare you to make this into a TV show. That kind of adventurous element of like just going for it no matter what. I'm really
I
into
love
that.
that.
So
I love that.
that'll be a while. I'll be working on that for a while. And most people know anybody that I talk to at shows, they know, and then it's common knowledge on my YouTube channel when I go live. It's like, oh, he's working on the sci-fi thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll just keep going and going and going, keep pushing and pushing. So
I love that. I'll have to do a little snooping. It dovetails into a theory I have about like, I have this rock and roll theory that the reason that we see so many enfants terribles, in the rock genre is you have these young people who get to a point where they have enough facility to do a thing, and they look around and the world, and they go, I mean, I love all this stuff that I grew up on, but I don't want to do that. And nobody's doing the thing that like I want to do. And when you're young enough to not know any better, that's when you kind of charge into and say, I'm going to go do the thing that I want to do.
yeah.
And that's where you get the great, stuff. That's where you get Cardigan Kurt. Like you get this stuff that like, oh, nobody else is doing this. And then the whole world chases after that. But the point being is like those people who change stuff are the ones who say, I don't see this happening anywhere and I need to do this.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I don't think you have to be 24 years old to do this. I think you can be any age. It just takes a lot of sort of foolhardiness,
gusto,
and guts. Yeah. And gusto. I mean, just to say, all right, I'm going to do this. I'm not going to play it safe. And because the reward for the risk is so much more pleasant than, oh, this is what people like.
It's true.
Like make what you want.
Yeah. Amen, man. And it's exactly what I'm doing. So, and it's like I only go for better, for worse, one speed.
Right.
And I put all my chips into one basket.
Mm-hmm.
And if it doesn't work out, I'll take those chips that I lost and make more chips, put them in a new basket. But it's like I feel like it's up to me as a creator to leave nothing on the table. And if I play it safe, I feel like life's just a little too short for that.
Yeah, and listen, if you play it safe, you're gonna be sitting around waiting for other people to say, okay, we have something for you, versus charging forward on your own thing and making it happen however you have to.
Mm-hmm.
So epic doesn't mean short.
No.
So how big of a scope are you envisioning for whatever this project is?
I don't know yet exactly, but I would like to bill it as an ongoing. That's the goal.
Okay.
And it's one of those worlds that is big enough that I could have other people kind of come in and tell their story within the context of the
I love
world.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of really cool stuff going on in the story, and I can't say too much about it, but it's pretty exciting.
Well, no, I'm not. Yeah, it's just I'm curious. I'm curious how you're framing it, because you're in a great space where you have the chances and opportunities to pursue many of the things that you want to pursue, and people will answer the email back, which is a great great thing to, so at least you're going to get the meeting, you're going to get the response, even if they say no, at least you're going to get someone to have that conversation.
Well, Image Comics already said yes, so I have that going for me.
Yeah, but they aren't going to pay you.
No, not necessarily. Yeah. But that's okay. I save some money and, maybe not buy any more Collings guitars should be okay.
That is such a niche thing. listen, if I'm so aware of how niche my podcast is, it's because we're not sitting here going, oh my God, this comic book is great. That comic book is great. Like, I'm not appealing to that audience. I'm appealing to people who are trying to make this stuff and struggle through it themselves on a creative process. So it could be get a bit erudite maybe at times for some folks. And now it's like, okay, let's talk about completely random things like, limited guitar manufacturers from Australia. That seems like a good plan. Um, but with the Riley book, like, so you guys are sharing art duties on the same page.
Yes, I mean we're not doing drawovers of each other's art, but we're
No. I mean, but like you're
on,
putting your work
like I'm
like within the same panel.
A panel of my art, a panel of Riley's art, a panel of my art.
Yeah. I love that.
Super cool.
It's so cool. We did a years ago. I did a Kickstarter comic that I wrote with 6 creative people, like with their own comics, and so I created a through line for these characters that would go through each one of these sort of creators' worlds, and everyone got to kind of do their own thing within these 6-page vignette stories. And it was a real interesting challenge. And then I kept saying to my co-creator on this thing, I'm like, I want this to culminate at the end where we have everybody drawing on the same page, but not like I mean like multiple people drawing in the same panel. Like, it would be a ridiculous escapade, but I think it'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's a logistical feat for sure. My wife is helping me with that, but it's the kind of thing which I feel like is going to make it stand apart from other things on the shelf. And the intentionality of how it's done too is a big part of why I'm so excited about it.
Yeah. So what's the origin of that project for you?
Well, I've been wanting to work with Riley for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And we couldn't because he was on an exclusive with DC for a while. So we'd always talked about doing like an image book together, but DC exclusives can be pretty ironclad,
Mm-hmm.
And so finally, when he was able to, I actually pitched DC stories that I would draw with Riley, and they said no. And so then I was like, okay, it's really time to start thinking about, like, whenever you decide to not, re-up with DC, for us to do like an image book together. So I was thinking and spending time with my daughter, and like going to the park, and she once pointed up to the moon on the way back from the park. She said the moon is following us. And I was like, oh, that's a comic book title if I've ever heard one.
Yeah.
So it kind of was birthed from there, from parenting and from a desire to be a good parent. And Riley also has children. His daughter's a little older than mine, and he also has a baby boy. And it's just it feels a very natural extension of ourselves, of where we're at in life right now.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing quite as great as taking your own life experiences and funneling them into the wonder of comics.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
So we're both very much invested in, to the point where even if it doesn't do well, we like almost don't even care. It just is. It's become now a beast that must leave our bodies and go onto the page, and it's like an excising. So I'm very thankful for Riley, and he's an incredible designer. He's an incredible storyteller. He's a much better designer than I am. He helped me with Wonder Woman Earth designs.
Wow.
He's helped me with a lot of different designs over the years, and kind of like pulled things or pushed things where they need to be pushed. And he thinks about creative and storytelling problem solving differently than I do. So it's really fun to get his take on how he moves through the page. And but he says, he tells me, I know how to think like you, so I know when I need to draw like you and when I need to draw like me. It's pretty cool.
That is rad. So when is that going to come out for the world to read?
It comes out September 18th.
There you go. So pretty soon.
Yeah.
That's rad. I love it. I love it. Well, so we don't anger your producer, we'll say good evening. Daniel, thanks, man. This is a pleasure. I'm glad that we were able to connect at Heroes, and I'm really glad that we were able to come on and do this.
Thanks for having me so much. I really appreciate it, brother. Have a great rest of your night. Thank you for the great questions and a great conversation.